In this episode, I would like to talk about those negative thoughts that are almost constant when you first start recovery, why they're there, and what we can do about them. Welcome to Fly to Freedom, the Anorexia Recovery Podcast. This podcast is for you if you're living in a restrictive eating disorder or supporting somebody else. I'm Julia Trahane, your host, an eating disorder recovery coach. And I lived in 40 years of anorexia, orthorexia, and exercise addiction before my recovery journey led me to complete freedom. Wherever you are in your recovery journey, this podcast is for you to help you grow and heal. Let's get on with the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. For those that have not met me before, I'm Julia Trahane, and I am with you on this recovery journey. So whether you're tuning in for the first time or been following for a while, I want to start by saying I see you, I hear you, and I'm so glad you're here. And today I'm diving into a topic that all of us in recovery can relate to. Those awful, persistent, negative thoughts that follow us around. If you've ever felt like your mind is sabotaging your recovery, you are definitely not alone, and this is the episode for you. Recovery isn't just about what we do with our bodies, right? It's also about what's going on in our minds. And I think for a huge amount of us, the physical aspects of recovery, like eating, resting, and changing our routines, are hard enough. But the hardest battles are the mental ones. Our minds are full of judgments, criticisms, and fears. And these thoughts feel so overwhelming that they can make recovery seem almost impossible at times. And today, I really want to unpack why these thoughts show up, and more importantly, how we can learn to cope with them in a way that supports recovery rather than sabotages it. It's not really talked about often enough, these insidious negative thoughts that pop up when we start to heal. And recovery is hard enough without that mental chatter that constantly undermines us. But by talking about it openly, I hope that we can take some of that power away from those thoughts. When we understand where they come from, we can see them for what they are. They're just thoughts. They're not facts. And once we can do that, we learn how to quiet them down and to make space for self-compassion and to really, truly heal. So let's start with why we have the negative thoughts in recovery. Why does recovery trigger them? A lot of it comes down to biology. When you've been living in an eating disorder, especially if you've been in it for a long time, your brains have learned to operate in survival mode. Think of it like this: when you're restricting food or over-exercising, your body and mind are in a constant state of stress, and your brain adapts to that stress. It becomes wired to seek control because control feels safe. And in this case, controlling food and your body might have become a coping mechanism, something that feels like it's helping you survive. Over time, your brain starts to associate restriction, exercise, and other disordered behaviors with a sense of safety and control. And as strange as it actually sounds, your brain might resist recovery because it sees letting go of these behaviors as a threat. And this is where a lot of those negative thoughts come from. They're almost like a defense mechanism, a way your brain tries to keep things normal, even though that normal is actually really harming you. Let's think about it like this. The eating disorder is like an inner critic, a voice that has learned to speak the language of fear and control. It tells you things like, if you eat that, you'll lose control, or you don't deserve to recover because you're not sick enough. And these thoughts are loud and they feel real because your brain is used to hearing them. But, and this is the big but, they are not the truth. When you start recovering, you're essentially challenging your brain's comfort zone. You're stepping away from the behaviors that have felt safe and familiar, even though they've been damaging. And your brain doesn't like that. It responds by throwing up all kinds of resistance in the form of negative thoughts. And that's why, especially in the beginning stages of recovery, it can feel like your mind is actually working against you. But what's really happening here is that your brain is just trying to cling to its old patterns. Let's look at some common negative thoughts. One that I certainly had and actually think is pretty common across the board is, I'm not sick enough to recover. It really is so common, isn't it? This idea that we're not sick enough to deserve recovery. The eating disorder will always try to minimize our pain, telling us that we don't need help, other people are sicker, that we're somehow not worthy of taking up space in recovery. But the truth is, you don't have to reach a certain level of illness to deserve healing. No one should have to hit rock bottom before they're allowed to get better. If you're struggling, if you're hurting, you deserve to recover, full stop. This thought often keeps people trapped in the cycle of an eating disorder because they feel like they're not bad enough to warrant concern. You might compare yourself to others who seem more unwell, or think that you haven't lost enough weight to justify asking for help. But an eating disorder is about so much more than just physical symptoms. It's about your mental and emotional health, your relationship with yourself and your body, and with others. So if you're waiting for a certain level of sickness, I'm telling you, you don't need to wait. You deserve recovery now. I'll never recover. This thought feels like a really heavy weight and it drags you down. It can feel so hard to imagine a future where the eating disorder isn't a part of your life, especially if you've been living in it for a long time. You might look at the progress you've made and think, it's not enough. I'll never be free from this. And part of that is actually the perfectionism that comes along with the eating disorder. And recovery is not linear. It's messy. It's really messy. It's up and down. It takes time. But just because it's hard and just because you might still have difficult days, that doesn't mean you won't recover. I've been there and I felt like I would never recover, like I was trapped forever in the cycle and the obsessive thoughts. Thought I've been in it too long, I'm too old. This is just life as it is now. But it wasn't true. Recovery is possible and it's not a far off dream. It's something that you build step by step, day by day. Every meal, every challenge you face and overcome brings you closer to freedom. Another big reason people say that they can't recover is that if I let go, I'll lose control. And this control is a big thing. Letting go of restriction or over-exercising can feel terrifying, right? And there's this deep fear that if you stop controlling your food and your body, that everything will spiral out of control, like your whole life. But what if true control isn't about restriction or rigidity? What if real control is about trust? Trusting your body, finding balance, living in a way that honors your health, physically, mentally, and spiritually. This paradox of control is that the more we try to control our food and our bodies, the more out of control we actually feel. The eating disorder convinces us that control is the answer, but in reality, it takes over every aspect of our lives. I'll never forget that moment when I realized that what I thought I was in control of was completely controlling me. Real freedom, real peace comes from letting go of that obsessive control and just trusting in the process. I just want to take a moment to share something I think will make your day just a little bit brighter. If you're someone who's looking for a simple way to infuse your mornings with a little more positivity and love, I've got something special for you. I'm thrilled to introduce my daily love emails, a little dose of encouragement and inspiration delivered right to your inbox every single morning. They're designed to set the tone for your day with mantras, affirmations, and gentle reminders to help you start your day with intention and love. Whether you're feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or just need a little pick-me-up, these emails will give you the gentle nudge you need to move forward with clarity and purpose. And as a bonus, every week you'll get an exclusive sneak peek of my upcoming podcast episode, plus extra resources to help you on your journey. So if you're ready to start each day on a positive note, head to the link in the show notes and sign up for my daily love emails. It's completely free, and I can't wait to be a part of your morning routine. Click the link, sign up, and let's make every day a little bit brighter together. So how do we cope with the negative thoughts? Because they're going to be there. We can't not have them. We can't avoid them. So we cope with them by, first of all, recognizing that the thought is a symptom. When that negative thought pops up, the first thing I want you to do is take a step back and look at it for what it is, a symptom of the eating disorder. It's not a reflection of who you are or what's true about you. It's just the eating disorder trying to pull you back into old habits. The more you practice recognizing that these thoughts are separate from yourselves, the less power they have. For example, let's say you're sitting down to eat and the thought comes up, you don't deserve this. You haven't moved enough today to earn this meal. Instead of believing that thought straight away, step back and recognize it as the eating disorder talking. It's a symptom of the illness, not a fact about you. And just because it's there, it doesn't mean you're going to have to act on it. Once you've recognized the thought, try to mentally separate yourself from this. I found it really helpful to write them down on paper because then they kind of stayed still. I don't know if that makes sense, but in my head, the thoughts moved and walked and twisted and spun around. But when I took them out of my head and put them on paper, they stayed still. So imagine your eating disorder as a separate entity, like an annoying sibling that you can't get rid of. When the negative thought comes up, say to yourself, that's the eating disorder talking. This creates some distance between you and the thought, which can help you see it more clearly. And doing that was a huge turning point in my recovery. I used to believe, like without any question, every single negative thought I had. I thought they were the truth. But once I started labeling these thoughts as part of the illness, I realized I didn't have to listen to them. I didn't have to act on them. Yes, they were going to be there, and they were just noise. And then I learned how to bring in compassion. And this part's so important. When those negative thoughts come up, if we respond to ourselves with compassion, and I know that's not always easy, especially when we're used to being harsh with ourselves, but imagine for a moment that somebody you love or your best friend was struggling with the same thoughts. I don't expect you'd criticize them. You'd probably tell them that they are good enough, that they do deserve kindness, that they deserve to eat and rest and heal. So you know how to be compassionate, and it's time to offer yourself that same kindness. When those negative thoughts come up, talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. The thought of I don't deserve to eat, you can respond with, of course I deserve to eat. My body needs nourishment and I'm worthy of care. And honestly, this does feel weird and awkward to begin with and kind of fake. But the more you practice, the more natural it becomes until being kind and compassionate to yourself actually becomes part of who you are. Once you've recognized and labeled the thought, you can challenge it. Ask yourself, is this thought based in reality? Does it feel loving, or is it a fear-driven thought? And you'll find that many of these thoughts are rooted in fear, not fact. So counter that thought with something that is true and feels much better. For example, if we go back to the thought of, I don't deserve to eat, let's look at ways to challenge it. Why do you believe this? Is it really true? The answer is always going to be no, it's not true, because everybody deserves to eat. Every human being deserves nourishment, and that includes you. You deserve to eat, you deserve to rest, you deserve recovery. And you're probably listening to this thinking, but it's different for me. And that's actually something pretty much everybody in recovery shares, this belief that it's different for them, this unicorn syndrome, where what's true for everybody else in society isn't true for you. And that's another one of the symptoms of the illness. It is the same for you. You're not a unicorn. You do deserve to eat. We can also use mindfulness and grounding techniques for when those negative thoughts start to spiral. They are great tools to help bring you back to the moment, because negative thoughts often pull us into the past or the future, which creates anxiety and stress. But mindfulness and grounding anchors us in the here and now. Use your senses, focus on your breath, listen to the sounds around you. What can you touch? What can you hear? What can you see? And this helps interrupt that spiral and brings you a moment of calm and back into the now. Let's just do a quick mindfulness exercise together right now. Take a deep breath in and out. Notice what sounds are around you. I can hear in the distance the washing machine, my clock ticking. I can actually hear my stomach rumbling as well. I think I need to go and have some lunch in a moment. Maybe you can hear traffic outside, or the hum of your fridge, or birds singing. Let your attention rest on those sounds for a moment, and then take another deep breath. You are here in this moment right now, and that's what's real. Your breath, your presence, not the noise of those thoughts. Another powerful tool is to reframe the narrative around recovery. Instead of seeing recovery as something terrifying or uncertain, change it to being an opportunity to rewrite your story, to build a life of freedom, peace, and self-love. And every time you're challenging and reframing one of those negative thoughts, you're taking a step towards that new life. You're showing yourself that you are stronger than the eating disorder. There were times in my recovery when the negative thoughts were so loud that I didn't think I could keep going. I felt totally exhausted from that constant mental battle. But when I learned that those thoughts weren't my truth, They were just echoes of the eating disorder trying to pull me back in. I realized the more I challenged them, the quieter they became, and the easier they became to ignore. And I know it's hard. I feel you with the struggle, and it can feel relentless. But you're not your thoughts, and you're not alone in this. And you really, really are so much more than the lies the eating disorder tells you. So every time you choose to challenge those thoughts, every time you choose to nourish your body and be kind to yourself, you're winning, you are healing, and I'm celebrating you. Today we've covered quite a lot of ground. We've talked about why we have the negative thoughts in recovery, some of the common ones that tend to show up, and more importantly, how to cope with them. These thoughts are going to be there. They're part of the journey, but they don't define you. And you don't have to let them control you. I'd love to hear from you after this episode. What negative thoughts have you been struggling with? How have you been coping with them? Feel free to reach out and leave a comment or a review. Your journey matters and your voice deserves to be heard. Recovery is possible for everyone. It's not easy, but it's so worth it, and you are so worth it. You're strong, you're brave, you're not defined by the eating disorder. So keep taking steps to your freedom. I'm celebrating you every step of the way, sending you all so much love. And thank you for being here.